At my brother's birthday dinner, I said I couldn't wait for the family trip to Myrtle Beach. My stepfather looked up from his plate, smiled at me the way you smile at someone who just told a joke they don't realize isn't funny, and said, "That's a family trip, sweetheart. You're not really family." Everyone laughed. My mother laughed, my younger sister laughed. My stepfather's son, who had been living in my mother's house for 3 years rent-free, laughed the loudest. I smiled. I picked up my fork. I finished my green beans. I drove home that night with the windows down even though it was 40 degrees, because I needed the cold air on my face. I needed to feel something sharp and real. I had been contributing to that household for 6 years. 6 years of Venmo transfers every month. 6 years of covering the electric bill when it spiked in August. 6 years of being the person they called when something needed to be fixed or paid for or figured out. And I was not really family. Okay. Good to know. I want to be clear about something before I go further, because I already know what some people will say. They'll say I should have seen it coming. They'll say I enabled it. Maybe they're right. But when you grow up being told that contributing is how you earn your place, that being useful is the same as being loved, you don't question it for a long time. You just keep contributing. You keep earning. You keep earning. You keep telling yourself that one day it will be enough. My name is not important. What matters is that I am 31 years old, I work in logistics coordination for a regional freight company, and I make a decent living. Not a flashy living. A steady, careful one. I have a 1-bedroom apartment in Charlotte that I pay for myself. I have a savings account that I built from zero starting at 23. I have a budget spreadsheet that I update every Sunday, and I have never once in my adult life asked my mother for money. She has asked me. Many times. The shared account situation started 4 years ago when my mother called me crying because the water heater had gone out and she didn't have the money to replace it, and my stepfather's paycheck wasn't coming until Friday, and could I please, just this once, transfer something over? I did. Then a few months later it was the car registration. Then it was my younger sister's school fees for a ceramics elective. Then my mother suggested that instead of all the back and forth transfers, why didn't I just have myself added to her checking account so I could move money over directly whenever something came up? I told myself it was practical. I told myself it was just easier. What it actually was, I understand now, was a way to make my access to their finances feel mutual when it was only ever moving in one direction. My sister, let's call her by what she was to me, which was the one who got to be the real daughter. She never transferred anything in. My stepfather never transferred anything in. My mother put in her portion of the household income, and then things came out. And sometimes what came out was more than what went in, and when that happened, there was a transfer from my account, and everyone carried on. I want to tell you about the birthday dinner first, and then I'll tell you what happened 9 days later, because the 9 days matter. The 9 days are the part where I made a decision. The dinner was on a Saturday in early March. I had driven 40 minutes to get there. I brought a chocolate cake from the bakery near my apartment because my stepfather doesn't like buttercream, and I had remembered that, even after everything, because that's the kind of person I had trained myself to be. I set the cake on the counter and my mother said, "Thank you," without looking up from the stove, and my sister asked if I had gotten the salted caramel one, and when I said no, she made a face and walked away. The Myrtle Beach comment happened over dinner. They were talking about it like it was already decided, like the dates were set and the rental was booked, and the only thing left was packing. My stepfather's son had apparently found a place right on the beach, 5 bedrooms. My mother was talking about which room she wanted. My sister was talking about restaurants she wanted to try. I said I couldn't wait because I genuinely assumed that the trip included me. I don't know why I assumed that. I think I assumed it because I had been paying into that household for 6 years, and because the last time they went to the beach, 3 years ago, I had transferred $800 toward the vacation rental and been thanked effusively and told I was such a good daughter, such a thoughtful girl. My stepfather's comment landed on the table and the laughter followed, and I sat there for 4 seconds that felt like much longer, and then I smiled and said, "Oh, of course," and changed the subject to whether they wanted me to slice the cake now or after the coffee. I sliced the cake. I drove home. I sat in my parked car in my apartment lot for about 15 minutes before I went inside. Here is what I did not do. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I did not send a long text to my mother asking what I had done wrong or why I was being excluded or whether she thought that was okay. I had done all of those things before, over smaller things, and what I had gotten in return was a headache and an apology that dissolved within a week. What I did do was open my banking app. I looked at the shared account. There was, at that moment, about $400 in it that could be attributed to my transfers over the previous month. I looked at my own primary checking account, which I had kept entirely separate. I looked at my savings account. And then I did something I had been thinking about doing for almost a year. I called my bank's customer service line. I asked what the process was for removing myself as an authorized user on another account holder's checking account. I took notes. I did not do anything yet. I just took notes and said thank you and hung up. Then, I made a spreadsheet. Not my Sunday budget spreadsheet, a different one. I went back through my transaction history for the past 3 years. Every transfer, every Venmo, every time I had moved money into that shared account, and I added it up. I am not going to tell you the total, because the number made me feel something I wasn't ready to feel that night. I will tell you it was significant. I will tell you it was more than a year of my rent. I transferred my remaining balance from the shared account into my primary checking. I left $43 in the shared account. I figured $43 was honest. It was roughly what I had put in that specific month before the birthday dinner, minus a proportional share of a grocery run I had covered. I was not trying to steal from them. I was trying to be accurate. Then I waited. I didn't say anything to my mother. I didn't text my sister. I went to work on Monday. I went to the gym on Tuesday. I meal prepped on Wednesday. I called my college roommate on Thursday just to talk about normal things. I did not wait anxiously. I waited the way you wait when you have already made a decision and you're just letting events catch up to the decision you made. 9 days after the birthday dinner, on a Monday morning, I was at my desk reviewing a shipment manifest when my phone buzzed. It was a fraud alert from my bank. Not my bank, the shared account bank. An attempt had been made to withdraw funds from the account via wire transfer. Amount, $5,800. I read it twice. Then I called the bank. I want to tell you what I felt when I made that call, because I think people expect me to say I felt panicked or devastated or blindsided. I didn't feel any of those things. I felt something closer to tired. The kind of tired that lives underneath your ribs. The kind you don't notice until something finally names it. I told the representative who I was. I told her I was an authorized user on the account and that I had not initiated the wire transfer and did not authorize it. She put me on a brief hold. She came back and confirmed the transfer had been flagged automatically due to the low account balance. Remember, there were $43 in that account. The transfer had been declined. She asked if I wanted to file a formal dispute and flag the account for review. I said yes. I asked also what I needed to do to formally remove myself as an authorized user. She walked me through it. It required a form, a signature, and about 3 to 5 business days. I said I'd come into the branch that afternoon. I went to the branch on my lunch break. I brought my ID. I sat across from a very calm woman named, I don't remember her name, but she had reading glasses on a beaded chain and she spoke to me like I was a person, which I appreciated. I signed the form. I thanked her. I walked back to my car. I sat in my car and I texted my mother 3 words. Check your account. That was it. No explanation. No paragraph. No asking if she was okay, or if there had been some misunderstanding, or if she wanted to talk about it. 3 words. My phone started ringing 40 seconds later. I did not answer. She called twice more. My sister called twice more. My sister called. My stepfather's number came up once. He almost never called me directly, which told me something about how the conversation on their end was going. I did not answer any of them. I was back at my desk by 1 o'clock. I answered a question from a colleague about a delayed shipment. I ate the lunch I had packed. I reviewed 2 more manifests. I did my job. That evening, I turned my phone back on and read the texts. My mother's first text was, "What is going on with the account?" The second was, "There's something wrong with the transfer. The bank is saying it's flagged." The third was, "Natalie, please call me. This is urgent." Natalie? That's my name. I'm telling you now because she used it. And there was something about seeing my name in that context. Urgent. Like I was an emergency resource. Like I was a utility that had stopped functioning. That made something in me go very quiet and very clear at the same time. My sister's texts were more direct. She said I had clearly done something to the account. She said the family trip was going to fall apart because of me. She said I was being selfish and dramatic, and that she didn't understand why I always had to make everything about myself. I read all of them. I set my phone down. I made dinner. I watched an episode of a show I'd been working through slowly. I washed my dishes. I went to bed. I called my mother the next morning. Not because I owed her a conversation, but because I wanted to have it. I wanted to say the thing out loud to another person, not just in my head. She answered on the first ring. She started talking immediately about the account, about the transfer being blocked, about how she had just been trying to move some money around for the trip deposits, about how the bank had frozen everything and it was a whole ordeal, and why hadn't I answered last night? I waited until she finished. Then I said, "Mom, you tried to wire $5,800 out of an account with $43 in it." Silence. The account had $43 in it because I moved my money out of it after the birthday dinner. After what Dad said. She started to say something about how I was being sensitive, how he was just joking, how I knew how he was. I said, "I know how he is. That's why I moved my money." She shifted. Her voice changed into the register I knew from childhood. The one that was softer and slightly injured. The one designed to make me feel like I had done something cruel. She said she didn't understand why I was punishing the whole family. She said the trip was planned. She said deposits had already been made. I said, "On what account?" Another silence. Because here is the thing. If deposits had already been made, they had been made on money that wasn't in that shared account yet, which meant the $5,800 wire had been the plan for covering it, which meant the assumption was that I would fund a vacation I had been told I was not invited to. I let that sit. My mother said they had assumed I would want to help, that I always helped, that this was how it worked. I said, "You told me I wasn't really family. Your husband said that at dinner in front of everyone, and everyone laughed. So yes, I moved my money, and I removed myself from the account yesterday. It's done." She said, "You removed yourself?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Natalie, you can't just." I said, "I already did. I went to the branch. It's done." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said my name again, softer, in a way that was almost an apology but not quite. Not quite. I said, "I hope the trip is great." I hung up. The trip did not happen. I know this not because anyone called to tell me, no one called to tell me anything useful for about 2 weeks, but because my sister eventually sent a long text explaining that the rental deposit was non-refundable, and that between that and the flights they had already booked and the activity reservations, the total loss was something I should probably know about. The text had a number in it. The number was presented, I think, as an accusation. I read it. I did not respond. What I did instead, that same week, was take the money I had moved from the shared account and put it into a high-yield savings account I opened specifically for a trip I wanted to take by myself. I had been wanting to go to Portland for years. The food, the coast, the bookstores. I had never gone because there was always something else. Always a water heater. Always a car registration. Always a ceramics elective. I booked the trip on a Thursday afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of sparkling water and a browser tab full of restaurant reservations. I booked a hotel room with a king bed and a bathtub because I could, because the room was mine. I booked a day trip to the coast and a cooking class and a morning at a bookstore I had read about 3 times and never visited. I am telling you this not to be triumphant about it. I'm telling you this because I think sometimes the ending of a story isn't a confrontation or a dramatic speech or a moment where someone finally understands what they did wrong. Sometimes the ending is just a hotel reservation. Sometimes it's just you finally using your own money on your own life in a city you chose for yourself. My mother texted me a few weeks later. Not about the account, not about the trip. Just a regular text about a TV show she thought I might like. I responded with a single emoji. I didn't call. My sister texted once more after that, something short about a family thing for Easter. I said I had plans. I did have plans. Portland was 3 weeks after Easter, and I spent the weeks leading up to it looking up restaurants and hiking trails and not thinking about shared accounts or birthday dinners or what it costs to be the person everyone calls when something needs to be fixed. I went to Portland. I ate excellent ramen on a rainy Tuesday. I stood on the coast and watched the water and felt not happy, exactly, but unencumbered in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Light. Like I had put down something heavy and walked away from it, and my arms were still a little sore. But I was walking. I did not post any of it. Not the ramen. Not the coast. Not the bookstore where I spent 2 hours and left with a tote bag full of things no one had asked me to buy. I kept it for myself. The whole trip I kept for myself. There's something I want to say to anyone who recognizes any piece of this. Not the specific details. Maybe your version doesn't involve a shared account or a beach trip or a stepfather's birthday dinner. Maybe yours is quieter, or maybe it's louder. But if you recognize the feeling of contributing and contributing and contributing and then hearing something that makes you understand, finally and completely, what your contribution actually means to the people receiving it, I want to say this. You already know what to do. You've probably known for a while. The knowing is the easy part. The doing is just logistics. And if there's one thing I'm actually good at, it's logistics. I still have my Sunday budget spreadsheet. I update it every week. The shared account line is gone. In its place, there's a line called personal travel that I add to every month, and it grows, and it's mine, and no one can wire it away. That's enough. That's more than enough. I've thought about this a lot since Portland. Not obsessively. I don't replay the birthday dinner on a loop or rehearse things I should have said differently. But I think about cause and effect. I think about how every situation like this one has a long, quiet history before it has a moment. The moment for me was my stepfather's voice at that dinner table. But the history started years earlier, the first time I transferred money into an account that was never really mine to share. Each transfer I made was a small lesson I was teaching the people around me, that my resources were available, that I would show up, that the cost of belonging was something I was willing to pay indefinitely. I taught them that. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because understanding it is what kept me from being angry for very long. Here is what I believe, not as philosophy but as something I have actually lived. The way you allow people to treat you becomes the standard they operate from, not because people are cruel by nature, but because humans are adaptive. They adjust to what is permitted. My family adjusted to a version of me that existed to fill gaps. Financial gaps, logistical gaps, emotional gaps. And they stopped seeing me as a person with limits because I had spent years pretending I didn't have any. When my stepfather made that comment, he wasn't being uniquely monstrous. He was being consistent with everything I had trained him to expect. That is the part that required real honesty to look at. What changed was not them. What changed was me deciding that I was no longer willing to be educated out of my own self-respect. That is what intelligence actually is, I think. Not knowing the right answers in advance, but being willing to look clearly at what a situation is actually telling you. Even when the truth is uncomfortable. Even when it implicates you in your own pain. And then, there is the question of what you do with that clarity. I did not blow up. I did not send the long text. I did not make a scene. I moved my money, quietly, on a Sunday night, with a glass of water on my desk and a budget spreadsheet open in the next tab. That is what I mean by resolve. Not the dramatic version, Not the satisfying movie version where someone finally says the perfect thing and everyone is changed. The real version is quieter. It is a form signature at a bank branch on your lunch break. It is 3 words in a text message. It is booking a hotel room in a city you chose for yourself, and feeling for the first time in a while like you are spending your life on something that belongs to you. The consequences for my family were real. The trip fell apart, money was lost, and that outcome was not something I engineered to punish them. It was simply the natural result of a system that had been built on my participation, suddenly operating without it. That is how cause and effect actually works. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It just arrives quietly, as math. I think about Natalie, about myself, at that dinner table, smiling, changing the subject to the cake. I don't feel sorry for her anymore. She was doing what she knew how to do. But I am glad she drove home that night and sat in the parking lot and got very quiet, because that quiet was the beginning of something. Whatever you are sitting with right now, whatever account, whatever dinner table, whatever comment that landed and then got laughed off, the clarity is already there. You probably already know. The rest is just deciding what to do next.